All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back. And we are still in that time where we have no UFC events in the near future, but the end of 2022 is already here, and you can't end the year without doing your award show. So that's what we're here to do. We are giving out 2022 UFC Awards. I think we have something like 7 or 8 awards to give out, and then at the very end, we'll just see a couple of 2023 prospects to keep an eye on. So I won't keep you here too long. Let's get right into it. The first one here, we are doing Knockout of the Year. And I know that this was a fantastic year for knockouts. The fact that we have the runner-up as Leon Edwards over Kamaru Usman pretty much sums it up here, because obviously Leon goes out there losing the fight, and he sets up that perfect leg kick in round 5 to knock out who at the time was the pound-for-pound number 1 guy in Kamaru Usman. So yes, the runner-up is Leon Edwards, and he very well could be the number 1 guy here. He could be in that number 1 spot, but I'll tell you who had a better knockout versus him was Alex Pereira. Those are the two guys, when you think about the entire 2022 year, those are the two biggest knockouts that we saw, two of the biggest wow factors that we saw. And for me, yes, the Leon one kind of did have that wow factor that would probably be better than Alex Pereira, but it felt like it was just a little bit luckier. And I hate to use that word because Leon did set up that strike. He did set up that leg kick very nicely. But Alex Pereira, man, he was working the legs of Israel Adesanya all fight. All 5 rounds. He was slowly building up to that moment. And it was Alex Pereira who goes in there in round 5. Izzy compromised on his back foot. You could see it. He said it afterwards. He said that Alex Pereira was working the legs. Something happened where he took a step back and he just did not feel right. Came back to the octagon against the cage. Alex Pereira just raining down blows. And the fact that Alex Pereira came in here and won that fight and takes the 3-0 on Israel Adesanya, that's got to be knockout of the year for me. It's got to be. It's so close. It's 1A, 1B, that type of situation where you could really go with either one. I don't blame you if you want to go with Leon Edwards. By all means, do that. But I think Alex Pereira over Israel Adesanya, because he was playing the long game. He was working the legs of Izzy, whereas Leon was just getting washed that entire fight. Outside of round 1, 2, 3, and 4 was all Usman. Even 5 was Usman up until that point. And yeah, he just set it up. It just a little bit more of that luck factor. I think he caught Usman sleeping, whereas Pereira, he was working the long game. So knockout of the year, it's Alex Pereira for me, guys. That brings us to our next one, submission of the year. And again, this was a tough one. You had a lot of good submissions in here. And I think a good runner-up here is Jiri Prochazka over Glover Teixeira. This fight was phenomenal. But what is Jiri known for? His striking. What is Glover Teixeira known for? His ground game. Did anybody see that coming? Into round 5, Glover Teixeira about to win the fight. And Jiri finds the finish. And you would think that he would go out there and maybe find the TKO finish, but the fact that he was able to secure that rear naked choke, I mean, that does it for me as the runner-up. I don't like giving the rear naked choke submission of the year just because it's the least fundamental. It's one that anyone really can go in there. You got the club and sub. Someone gets hurt. You just grab a neck. You choke it. It's the least fundamental. So I don't like to give it as the submission of the year. But just given the fact that it was Jiri over Glover, it's just insane to me that he was able to get that submission. I think Glover Teixeira had never been submitted before that. So I'm going to go runner-up with Jiri Prochazka, but there was one submission that really stood out to me. Just real quick, as I was thinking about it today, I did have another runner-up that I wanted to throw in there, and that was Tresean Gore over Josh Fremd. Josh Fremd winning that fight. Tresean Gore all of a sudden just gets the weirdest guillotine you've ever seen in your entire life, and that went viral. That had memes for days, and I think that definitely could be submission of the year. It wasn't the most technical one. I think a lot of people would say it was pretty sloppy, but the fact that he was able to pull it off is pretty astounding. But it's not my number one. My number one, guys, the submission of the year, it's got to be Islam Makhachev over Charles Oliveira. And it's kind of for that same reason. It's who Islam was able to do that against. It's Charlie Olives, man. This dude is your UFC's all-time leader in submissions. And I think it finishes in total as well. I mean, this guy was going in there, finishing everyone, submitting everyone. No one wanted to go to the ground with this guy. No one was surviving with him. And then Islam just said, you know what? I know that I'm better than you on the ground. I'm going to take this fight to the ground, and I am going to submit you. And he locked in that arm triangle. It was Islam all day in that fight. And just given the competition, just given how good Do Bronx has looked up until that point, for Islam to go in there and submit him at the biggest stage for the title, it's hard not to give it to him, man. It's hard not to give it to him. So I'm going with Islam Makhachev, submission of the year. And that brings us to our next one here. So we're going to go next one. We're going to go with the comeback of the year. Comeback of the year. So runner up. Obviously, all three of these guys. Leon Edwards was losing to Kamaru Usman. Yuri Prohaska was losing to Glover Teixeira. Alex Pereira was losing to Israel Adesanya. All three of those guys at the highest level, the championship level, when the belt is on the line, they came back and found a way to win the fight. Now, the difference between these three guys and the one that I actually have winning comeback of the year is that, you know, you look at Leon Edwards, he was just getting washed by Kamaru Usman, mixing in the wrestling, kind of a boring fight there, if we're being honest. Yuri Prohaska, you could say that one was very exciting. That was a phenomenal back and forth fight. And Alex Pereira, kind of the same thing as a Leon Edwards. Izzy was working him. Izzy was winning that fight. He was up 3-1 going into the 5th round, and he found a way to come back and find that finish. But for me, I want to see the guy who's just getting the shit kicked out of him, who is so close to being finished, but doesn't get finished and completely reverses everything and finds a way to win the fight. And for me, guys, that was Matt Schnell. That was Matt Schnell over Suma Derji. And I hate to say it, I don't like to be offensive to fighters, but Matt Schnell, as we've seen, the dude just does not have a chin. He's got a glass chin in there. His last fight out against Mateus Nicolau, we saw it there, got knocked out, finished. And it was more of the same against Suma Derji, who was just destroying Matt Schnell. I think they only scored one knockdown for Suma Derji. But, dude, at least 3 or 4 times this dude was getting knocked down. The ref could have stepped in at any point. Nobody would have complained. He was getting absolutely worked. He had a 99% chance of losing that fight, of the fight getting stopped, of him getting finished. And all of a sudden, he just flipped the switch and found a way to come back. Suma Darji's tired, and he submits him. Absolutely insane. That's the type of comeback that I want to see. And I get, in the last 3 guys that I mentioned, Leon Edwards, Yuri Prohaska, Alex Pereira, all of those guys, they did bring a comeback at the highest level. But I want the dude who has a 99.9% chance of losing the fight and somehow comes back. He's almost getting finished, and he comes back. So for me, it's Matt Schnell all day. I love that pick. And there's a couple other ones in there you could probably toss in. One that comes to mind was Sergey Morozov was winning the fight against Silva de Andrade. De Andrade almost getting finished. He somehow comes back. That was a phenomenal comeback as well. Also could probably be, you know, fight of the year as well. But for me, guys, Matt Schnell. And that brings us to our next one. So breakout fighter of the year. This is the guy who started out, maybe you didn't really know his name. Maybe he was approaching the top 15. Maybe he was ranked 15, 14, 13, somewhere kind of in that bottom tier, and just had a massive year. And there's a lot of names that come to mind here. The runner-up that I had, Jamal Hill, he had a great 2022. Right now, he's coming off of 3 straight finishes. In 2022, he had 2 finishes. One over Johnny Walker, who was doing the stanky leg. He absolutely destroyed him there. And then Thiago Santos, a pretty decent back and forth fight. But Thiago Santos, a very durable guy. Jamal Hill found a way to finish that fight. And then at the end of the year, even better, in December, end of the year, Dana White says, you know what, Jamal Hill, I'm impressed. Just completely discredits Ankalaev versus Jan Blachowicz. And he says, Jamal Hill, you're getting a title shot against Glover Teixeira. So for me, for Jamal Hill getting 2 huge wins, 2 big finishes in 2022, and getting the announced title shot. I think that's a huge year for Jamal Hill. Granted, he was kind of on our radar beforehand, but I think this was a breakout year for him for sure. Other names that I tossed in there, Amanda Lemos ending the year, knocking out Marina Rodriguez. I think she's going to be fighting for a belt pretty soon. Sergey Pavlovich, dude, that's a guy who nobody was talking about in 2022. He comes out, gets 2 big wins. I believe it was Derek Lewis most recently against Tai Tuivasa. That dude could be fighting for a belt pretty soon. And another, dark horse here, not necessarily in contention just yet, but he is working his way up pretty quickly. Roman Dolidze, man, I think he's turning a lot of heads. He had a big end to 2022. But for me, this award is easy. Breakout of the year. Come on, man. Come on. It's Alex Pereira. Everybody knows it. And I hate to give out the awards that are super obvious, but when a guy actually deserves it, you have to give it to him. Alex Pereira, not even close. Got 1 win in 2021. I believe that was his UFC debut. Not even close to a title shot. We start to talk about it a little bit because obviously he has the backstory with Israel Adesanya, but we're not necessarily there just yet. We're talking about the potential. In 2022 is where that potential became a reality. Bruno Silva in March wins that fight. Then he goes out, immediately gets a huge jump up in competition against Sean Strickland, who's a high-level guy. I don't care what you say. He's still a top 10 ranked guy. At that point, he might have been close to top 5. Knocks him out clean. That was a bad look for Sean Strickland. That was a very good look for Alex Pereira. And then after that, he gets his title shot. Gets the title shot against Israel Adesanya. The storyline is massive. He's losing that fight. All of a sudden, round 5, turns it around, flips the switch, gets the win, knocks out Israel Adesanya. The only guy to knock this dude out. My God, it's Alex Pereira. It's all day, man. And it's not even close. It's not even close. This guy just completely took 2022 against Israel Adesanya, might I add, who's also, pound for pound top 5, has defended his belt like 5 times. Alex Pereira comes in, has a massive year, ends the year as the champion. I love it. And I just don't see another name that can really take that from him at this point. So next one here, I believe we have moment of the year. And there was 2 big moments, in my opinion. So the runner-up, UFC 279. Very hard to forget this one. This was unprecedented, I believe. I don't think this has ever happened. So what really happened here was we had Khamzat Chimaev taking on Nate Diaz. That was the original fight, the main event, 5 rounds. Kevin Holland was scheduled for a different fight. Daniel Rodriguez scheduled for a different fight. And all of a sudden, Khamzat Chimaev misses weight. Big time misses weight. And all of a sudden, we're scrambling. That's the main event. What are we going to do? So what they do is they pin all these guys with different opponents. Tony Ferguson coming in on short notice is going to take on Nate Diaz. Kevin Holland says, you know what? I'll fight Khamzat Chimaev. I don't mind doing that. Then they pin D-Rod with the leech. And we have 3 completely different matchups going into UFC 279. I have never seen anything like it. And if you were following along while this was going on, it was complete chaos. Nobody had an idea of what was going on. And we all thought it was fake news when they were like, oh, I think Tony's about to come in. I think Chimaev might fight Holland. I don't think anyone really believed it until they officially announced it. And we did end up getting a pay-per-view card that was pretty exciting to watch. Nate versus Tony was decent, but, Khamzat Chimaev going in there, ragdolling Kevin Holland. The Leech versus D-Rod, that was a fun fight. So, UFC 279, unprecedented. We've never seen it before. That was a lot of fun. So in terms of moments of the year, I think that's totally up there. But for me, the winner here is Leon Edwards over Kamaru Usman. And it's just really the way that he was able to win this fight and end the narrative, get rid of the narrative that nobody really cares about Leon Edwards, that he doesn't deserve to be getting the title shot. This dude was on like a 10-fight win streak in the UFC. He was beating everybody that they gave to him, and he was getting canceled bouts left and right. Nobody really wanted to face him. He's not super marketable. I don't think Dana White really liked him. The fans didn't really seem to like him. But he goes in there. He finds a way to beat Kamaru Usman which one is insane. But then afterwards, you see him on the mic, and there were so many great viral moments. You could just feel how excited, how good this guy excuse me, how good this guy felt to be getting a win at the highest level, of achieving that moment, of winning the belt, of winning gold, becoming the best 170er on the planet, telling his mom that he made it. It was just an insane moment to see Leon Edwards win that. And you just probably have never felt better about someone winning a fight than you did after watching Leon Edwards get that win. Post-fight interview, it was insane in the octagon. Man, that was a great moment. Absolutely. I think that's moment of the year for me. UFC 279 obviously was crazy. But for me, it's Leon Edwards. And that brings us to our next one. We got fight of the year. This is always a tough one. We always get some close ones. The runner-up for me, though, Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. I think we kind of forget this kind of snuck in there in the early part of 2022, that first half, and we kind of forgot that it happened, but it did. And this fight was an absolute banger. Khamzat Chimaev coming into this fight was like a -500 favorite over Gilbert Burns, a guy who almost beat Kamaru Usman, knocked him down, kind of almost got the finish, but a guy who's been at this division and has been really, in my opinion, a solid top 3 guy. I think he can hang with anyone, and that was really the moral of this story, dude. It was Khamzat Chimaev, a -500 favorite, an absolute dog in Gilbert Burns. Nobody really seemed to be giving him a chance. And then they go out there and we get fight of the night. We get potential fight of the year. It was massive. Such a great fight, such a good back and forth. And it really showed us, one, yes, Gilbert Burns still has it. Absolute dog, belongs in that top 3, but it really proved that Khamzat Chimaev, the hype is real. Before this, we didn't really know. We didn't really know what he was made of. We needed to see him get battle tested, and he did against Gilbert Burns, and he won the fight. Great back and forth. I wish it was 5 rounds, but still, it's got to be up there. It's got to be up there, and that's my runner-up. And the number 1, I feel like it's pretty obvious. The winner, it's got to be Glover Teixeira versus Jiří Procházka, man. It has to be. This is another one of those stories where you get a guy like Glover Teixeira in his 40s. Were people really saying he was going to win this fight? I mean, how many times is this guy going to win? And we're still going to say, yeah, but he's in his 40s and he's going against a young killer. Jiří Procházka, one of the biggest fan favorites, finishes almost every one of his fights. Super dangerous. We're like, Jiří's going to win this fight, right? Nope, wrong. Glover comes in there and just completely does exactly what he does. He goes in there, super tough, takes the fight to the ground. He was landing some big shots on the feet as well. He almost finished the fight standing, but he was able to get the fight to the ground. He wrestles, he grinds. And what you got to love in a fight of the year candidate is that it takes 2 to tango. Both of these guys have to be willing to go back and forth. And I want to see the exchanges on the feet, which we saw. But I want to also see, yeah, Glover was able to take the fight to the ground. But between the 2 guys, there were 6 total reversals. It was a ridiculous back and forth, the scrambling. To me, that's what really makes a fight of the year. And then when you throw in the fact that it's 5 rounds in a championship setting, I mean, it's almost too obvious, right? Like everyone out there is probably picking Glover versus Jiří 1, and it's a damn shame we didn't get the second fight at the end of the year here because we know how this goes. This is great. Yeah, so for me, guys, fight of the year, Glover versus Jiří. Like I said, yeah, sometimes it's a little bit too obvious. I want to go in there and throw in some wild cards, but at the end of the day, if it's the fight of the year, it's the fight of the year, and it's really hard to argue this one. Really hard to argue this one. You could also throw in Poirier versus Chandler, which we got towards the end of the year. That was a phenomenal fight. Again, towards the end of the year, Stephen Thompson, Wonder Boy, taking on Kevin Holland. That was an awesome fight. Just stand-up battle. Holland didn't want to go to the ground. Love that. So, but yeah, it's easy. It's easy. Glover versus Jiří. All right, performance of the year. I like this one. My runner-up, Alexander Volkanovski. His name hasn't been mentioned yet as we go through this list of awards. This is the first time he's coming up, but I think the 50-45 performance that he put on against Max Holloway was insane. Max Holloway first off, doesn't lose fights to many people. Very few people, in fact. And Alexander Volkanovski now has 3 wins on this guy, but it's Max Holloway. We were talking about this guy as one of the greatest featherweights of all time. And both fights beforehand were so close. They were so razor thin close. You could go either way with the scoring. I thought Volk did win both of them, but to 50-45 him, to 50-45 a guy like Max Holloway, I mean, that's ridiculous. And really, that's what really bumped him up. That's what really got our eyes looking at this guy being like, holy crap, this guy might be the best fighter in the entire UFC. He might be the pound for pound number 1. So for me, guys, it's ridiculous. This guy has elevated his game so much. He really separated himself as a top 1, 2, 3, wherever you want to put him. He is a top pound for pound guy. But guys, I got a performance of the year that I think is better than this. And I don't know if you guys will necessarily agree with it, but let's give it a shot anyway. My winner here is Amanda Nunes, the revenge fight against Juliana Pena. Of course, the backstory, the first fight, Juliana Pena is what, a plus 1,000 underdog? I made a video that said Amanda Nunes literally cannot lose this fight. Well, she got submitted in round 2. Upset of the year, one of the biggest upsets of all time. But it turns out Amanda Nunes, I think she was hurt. I think she had a bad camp. She wasn't able to work on the cardio because I think there was some knee injuries going on. And in this return fight, man, she made such a statement. And the reason that I'm giving her performance of the year is, 1, the revenge factor. I absolutely love that. People were counting her out because I've doubled down. I said Amanda Nunes is going to win this fight in the rematch. And people are in the comments, no, she's washed. It's Juliana Pena. She's going to win again. Dude, Amanda Nunes, 50-45, 50-44, and one judge gave it 50-43. 3 knockdowns here, 12 minutes of control time, absolutely dominant. She's the greatest women's fighter of all time. This cemented it. It showed us that she's still here. She has not gone anywhere at all, even after losing to Juliana Pena. And I just think that bounce back performance is absolutely absurd. To get a 50-43 and a 50-44, I mean, 50-45 we've seen, but my God, 43 and 44, that is a huge swing for Amanda Nunes. The Lioness, the greatest women's fighter of all time, performance of the year. I don't think you're going to see that from many other places, but let me know in the comments what you guys think, because I feel like that's going to be a controversial one. Let's go to Fighter of the Year. Let's go to Fighter of the Year. There's so many candidates here. This was such a tough one to pick, but I think I got it right. And I think I got it right. The runner-up, I'm going with Alex Pereira. I had him as the breakout guy. Absolutely. I have no problem doing that. We didn't really talk about this guy in 2021. Small talks, a little bit of rumors. Is he going to fight Izzy? 2022 blows it wide open. He gets it done. And I give him credit. I give him all the credit in the world. And now where's he sitting in the pound-for-pound rankings? I'm sure he's in the top 10 now. And we're looking at this guy, 185. He's absolutely massive. If Izzy wants to go in there, get the rematch, I might have to pick Pereira. Robert Whittaker, that's an intriguing fight, but I think he really can handle anyone at 185 to the fact that he might be able to go up to 205. But that's a discussion for another day. I just think this guy right here, he deserves it. I don't want to just forget about this guy. And we just talked about him. It's Alexander Volkanovski. This was his year. This was the year that he made the jump. He became the #1 pound for pound best fighter in the entire UFC. In a year where Israel Adesanya fell, Kamaru Usman fell, Charles Oliveira fell. So many of these guys, these top-ranked guys, these pound-for-pound guys who have been staples in the division for such a long time, they all fall. But Alexander Volkanovski takes that step up. He gets the rematch with Max Holloway. 50-45s him, as we just talked about. My runner-up for performance of the year. 50-45 over Max Holloway. Destroyed, absolutely destroyed the Korean Zombie. So he goes 2-0 in 2022, 2 big wins, becomes the #1 pound for pound guy. Immediately goes in and says, "Yeah, I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna go fight Islam Makhachev, maybe the baddest dude in the UFC right now." He said, "I don't care. I'm gonna go fight him. I'm gonna go become a double champ." This dude is a bad man. It's time that he gets the credit he deserves. I think he gets Fighter of the Year. I really do. And I can see it going to Alex Pereira, but I think we just need to give more credit to Alexander Volkanovski. So that's where I'm at, man. That's where I'm at. And that's the last one that we had on the list here. That was Fighter of the Year. After this, I got 3 guys on the 2023 Prospect Watch. As we close out 2022, I'm going to throw out 3 guys here. The first one, kind of an obvious one. Yeah, Raul Rosas Jr. Where does he go now? He comes in at the end of 2022, gets a, I'm not going to call it a big win, but it's a statement win. It shows us that he belongs in the UFC. 17, 18 years old, doesn't matter. This dude has it. And I'm just curious to see what 2023 looks like for him. I really pray to God that he gets, maybe 2, maybe 3 fights at the most. We need to ease this kid into it because he's so damn young. And I mean, what's this UFC career going to look like? Is he going to fight for 20 years when he's 38 years old? I mean, 17, 18 years old, that is a long time. We've seen it way too often. If someone gets pushed too quickly, they'll be done by the age of 27. The Darren Tills of the world. You know what I mean? So I'm interested to see where they throw this guy. Number 2 on the list, a guy that kind of caught my attention. Not really a big name yet, but Tatsuro Taira, man. Sneaky, came into the UFC in 2022. He's only 22 years old. Went 2-0 last year against Candelario and I think it's CJ Vergara. Those were his 2 competitors, and that's decent, man. That's a decent level. Especially the Vergara win. That's a good win right there. That's a well-rounded dog. That's a guy who keeps coming forward. But it's this guy, he comes in there shredded, in phenomenal shape. The ground game of this guy, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu on this guy, the grappling work is very good. It's very good. It's someone I really want to keep an eye on, and it's someone who has not made a name for himself yet, but I just want to keep an eye on this dude because I think he could be something special. I really do. We haven't really seen the skills on the feet just yet, but it's because he just goes straight to the ground and he can choke you out in 2 seconds. And he's 22 years old. But the number 1 guy, let's not forget, and I don't even know what you guys think. Is he a prospect? Is he not? I mean, to the MMA world, he's brand new. But it's Bo Nickel, dude. It's Bo Nickel all day. And this is such a hilarious story. He had to fight in the Dana White Contender Series 2 times. From the first fight in the Dana White Contender Series, he was like a minus 2,000 favorite. Wins in 30 seconds? And Dana White says, yeah, no, I think we're not ready yet. I think you need to fight one more time. You got to come back to the Dana White Contender Series, fight again, and then if you win that, then we'll give you a contract, which is ridiculous because they give contracts out on that show like it's nothing sometimes. And the fact that they made Bo Nickel do it 2 times, obviously it was a business move. It's Dana White. It's drawing eyes to the Dana White Contender Series. That's fine. We knew he was going to win the second fight. He got the contract, and he almost made his debut in December. We almost had it. At that last, might have been the pay-per-view card. I think it was. We almost had him make his debut, but I think he had an injury, had to pull out. But there is massive expectations for this guy. Massive expectations for Bo Nickel in 2023. If the hype is real, this is a guy who is going to go straight to the top. With that style, the way that he wrestles, the way that he's able to take your back and the flip of a switch, 1 second, doesn't matter. And if the striking checks out, I mean, this dude can easily go to the top 5 in a year. I can see it. He'll have that Khamzat Chimaev type of hype, I should say. But I think they'll feed him to the wolves pretty quick because the hype is there. The hype is real. It checks out. I think Bo Nickel, massive 2023. Those are 3 prospects to watch. And that's it, guys. That's the award show. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, who you have, who you would have picked for each of those categories. And we're going to close out the year 2022. Try to get you some more content out there. I am Steve with the MMA Minute. And until next time, guys,